One of the first steps we have to take in order to add iSCSI to our environment is creating the VLANs necessary to carry that iSCSI traffic. Now, there are also some important considerations that we're going to want to take as far as some of the options that UCS gives us for traffic engineering, for making sure that the iSCSI traffic is isolated on the uplinks. And one of the things we want to focus on in this nugget is the fact that iSCSI traffic is actually very important to us in the data center. If it gets disrupted, if there's a hiccup, if it gets cut off, it's going to cause us massive pain points when our virtual machines have effectively their hard drives ripped out from under them because the hard drive they were attaching to across the network just became unreachable. So what we want to do is, first of all, make sure that iSCSI has its own VLAN. This isn't just within the UCS space. This needs to be extended down to the virtual hosts, whatever our hypervisor we're using, whether that's VMware, Hyper-V, KVM, any of those. And then we also want to make sure that the upstream network is actually configured for that iSCSI VLAN as well. So we'll come into the LAN tab here, and under the LAN cloud, we're going to expand this, find VLANs, right-click, and create a VLAN. So the VLAN, we can call it whatever we want. We'll call it iSCSI. And again, because UCS doesn't always tell us which VLAN number is associated with a VLAN name, we do want to do a dash and say whatever that VLAN ID is. In our case, we'll say it's VLAN 15. So we configure the ID to be 15, and we want to leave all the other options default. And so we say OK. And we've created our VLAN for iSCSI VLAN 15. Now next, this is optional, but we want to consider something here. So let's say we have our fabric interconnects, and the fabric interconnects have uplinks to the network. We just have a single LAN uplink here, set of uplinks. And if the data traffic is on these links and the iSCSI traffic is as well, we're going to have contention here. And UCS gives us some great QoS mechanisms, which we are going to explore as part of this skill, to make sure that iSCSI has the bandwidth that it needs in order to fully function. However, it would sometimes be best if we, rather than throwing iSCSI onto that connection, we have a different connection that's dedicated for the storage traffic. Because if we had fiber channel going, for example, if we had fiber channel going up to a SAN, it would get its own dedicated links. And so we want to kind of mimic that with iSCSI as much as we can. So in our case, going back here again, we'd make dedicated links for iSCSI traffic. Again, this is strictly optional. It's just something that we might want to do. So the question is, how do we do that? If we wanted to have a dedicated uplink to iSCSI, how do we configure it? Well, the way we configure this is with something called a VLAN group. So we can take a look at the VLAN groups here and right-click and say Create VLAN Group. And we'd want to give it a name here. We'd call it the iSCSI-group. And we will check VLAN 15 here in the box. And if the upstream network, by the way, has VLAN 15 as the native VLAN, we'd want to match that by clicking the radio button here. So for our example, we'll say that it's being tagged on both sides, so we're going to leave the native VLAN alone. We want to click Next. And we want to assign these iSCSI interface, or this iSCSI group, to specific interfaces. So in our example, let's see here. We're going to say that port 15 is going to be the default. It's going to carry all of the other VLANs. Port 16 is going to be our iSCSI VLAN. So 16 on Fabric A, can hold Control and click 16 on Fabric B, move them over to the selected uplink ports category, click Next. We don't have any port channels in our example, but in your environment, you might have only port channels, in which case you'd skip the last section and come straight to here. And then we say Finish. And we've created that group. So we expand this, we can see the VLAN group, the iSCSI VLAN 15. And we can go ahead and add another one, by the way, and call this the default group. We can add the other VLANs, 10, 20, and 30 in our case. Let's say VLAN 10 is the native. We want to match that, so we'll check the radio box there. Click Next. Again, this time we're only going to select 15. So ports 15 on Fabric A and B. So we move that over and we say Finish. So now we've created our two VLAN groups and we have successfully isolated iSCSI traffic to its own uplink. It's generally advised that iSCSI traffic has not only its own VLAN, but even its own uplinks from the UCS Fabric interconnects. And we can configure that using VLAN groups. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.